Hi, everybody. Welcome to our event today. We're really happy to have Rod Lewin with us. And we're going to talk a bit about one of his books, but a whole bunch of other stuff too. And I want you to pay close attention because this is wonderful stuff. And, I was surprised. I thought that this was a mystery, and it's got a mystery in it, but it really is more of an adventure tale. And we'll get into that and you'll understand a little bit better as we go. But Rod has been, I'm corrected, I think in my notes, I said you'd been at this for 40 years, more like 50 years, isn't it, Rod?
It is now, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, keep going, let's keep going. Um, the book we're going to talk about a little later is The Missing Mallard Mystery, and it's about a particular, well, I'll wait and you could tell us what the mallard is that's missing. But I want to talk a little bit first with you, Rod, about you and your writing history and anything like that. You've been flying for, I say, many years. How has that affected the way you want to do storytelling?
Uh, that's a good question. I really didn't start thinking about story. Well, actually, I did. I started talking about storytelling in the many long hours that I spent in the cockpits of airliners. But my writing really started to go back a little bit to a aircraft accident I had a long time ago in 1978, before I got my commercial license and before the clock started ticking on that 50 years of exemplary aviation experience, fortunately. But anyway, I had an aircraft accident while I was learning to fly the day before my commercial pilot check ride, as a matter of fact, and and it in itself is and was a story that I turned into an autobiography, and that autobiography is called Steel Spine, Iron Will, because I still have a steel spine as a result of regenerative and corrected. I was paralyzed in the crash when I had the accident. I hit some power lines on the trying to do a forced landing, and I was paralyzed in the crash. And a very well-known neuro and spinal surgeon in Australia by the name of Dr. John Yo repaired my spine and gave me a steel rod in my spine. Told me I'd never walk or fly again, but I think he knew that was going to give me the determination I needed to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, several years after that, I wrote Steel Spine, Iron Will. A steel spine because I still have a steel spine, and Iron Will because everybody said when I was still wearing braces on my legs at the time, well, you're never going to fly again. You must have an iron will to want to fly airplanes again after what happened to you. So that became the title of the book. And then the autobiography, I published it myself 30 years ago in 1995 because I couldn't get a major publisher to take a chance on it. So I decided to publish it myself, and it's still in print. I wrote it. I wrote the book. I started my own publishing company, and I had a printer and publisher here in Dallas, in the Dallas area where I live now, print it up for me. So it's still available on Amazon, but they're all used copies that are available now. But anyway, that got me into the writing jag, and then several years later, I started writing novels. And how that came about is because sitting in the cockpit of airliners for many long hours in the day and the night gives you a lot of food for thought. And as a matter of fact, the definition of airline flying is hours and hours of pure boredom punctuated by moments of pure terror. So, those boring hours and some of the terrorizing incidents that happened during my flying career started me thinking about putting pen to paper, which it was in those days. It's all computerized now, but that was when I started getting the idea to start writing some novels.
Well, you've got a lot of technical information in this book. I know it started right off. I was learning all sorts of facts I never knew. I didn't know the names of planes. I didn't know any of that. And you pretty much fly smaller planes, or do you fly any, commercial jets or anything? Or pretty much what you fly is commercial, but they're smaller planes, aren't they?
Well, the seaplanes I flew smaller planes, but I did have an airline career when I came up here from Australia. The way I met my first wife, who was from Dallas, as I was flying smaller seaplanes out to the Barrier Reef. That was really my first commercial job after I got my commercial license and after I had recovered from the crash. But when I came up to the US, I started flying commercially for the bigger company. So I have flown both big jets and the smaller planes. But my love, I somehow fell into flying seaplanes, and that's always been my fallback and my first love. Every time I lost a jet job, I go back to flying seaplanes again. So I've got both spectrums. I've seen the airline industry from the airline side of it and from the smaller charter and mostly seaplane side of it. So many people have asked me when I came up to the States which airline I worked for, and my standard answer up and including the present time is every airline that ever went broke. Starting with Braniff, an old Texas airline, and ending with American. I got laid off. I was an instructor pilot on the MD-80 jet at American Airlines at the time of 9/11, and I got laid off from American after 9/11. And after that, I went back to seaplane flying again. And then currently, I'm still my present job is I'm a 737 simulator instructor. The company I work for
And
has got a U.S. Navy contract, and we train Navy.
this series, this is the fourth book that we're going to talk about.
Correct.
Series, right? And you have the same characters throughout the four books.
Exactly. My character's name is Mitch Blaine, and that's a combination of a couple of characters I knew from a previous life. But the first book in the series, I started writing the Escalante Enigma, which is the first. It wasn't intended to be a series. It was just a standalone novel called the Escalante Enigma, and I had spent a lot of time in the southwest of the U.S. and the Four Corners country, which I love, and which reminds me of the Australian Outback. And I, in fact, spent the last couple of months and wrote the last couple of chapters of the Escalante Enigma on the Navajo Reservation in the northeast corner of Arizona, and that's where that one was set. And there's a lot more technical information about flying the PBY, the airplane, the flying. It's a World War II flying boat, which is really the hero of the story. And my hero lives on a refurbished PBY in Sydney Harbour, and being an old bold pilot, drinks copious quantities of alcohol and shoots the bad guys and saves the fair damsels in distress. And that was, but there was a lot of technical information in the Escalante, a lot more than I intended to put in there with checklists and ancient navigation techniques that are now outdated. And it started doing very well. So out of not so much boredom, but interest in writing a sequel, I wrote a sequel to that. And then shortly thereafter, I wrote a third one, and then became a trilogy. And then I started writing the Escalante Enigma about 5 years. The Missing Mallard Mystery about 4 or 5 years ago. And between my present job and writer's block and just life gets in the way, I didn't get it published for about 5 years. And it finally came out by the same publisher in April of last year.
I'm kind of wondering this fourth book. I'm sorry, I've not read the others yet, but this fourth book, and you say it's about a water plane. I'll call it that because I don't know the right
seaplane. It's a flying boat, actually.
Seaplane.
Flying boat, yeah.
But I'm wondering, is this based on anything that really happened? This search. Well, first of all, tell us what the Mallard is.
Okay, a Mallard is a flying boat. There's the difference between a seaplane or a float plane and a flying boat is you see the smaller float planes that are like the smaller Cessnas on floats. A flying boat is a floating hull. It looks like it's got a boat hull it's basically a boat with wings. That's why they call it a flying boat. So the Grumman Mallard was a flying boat that was built by the Grumman Aircraft Company after World War II. But the PBY, if you look at the cover, the PBY that I mentioned a little while ago is a much bigger flying boat that was used extensively in World War II as a reconnaissance bomber and air sea rescue flying boat. But the Mallard, they only built 50 Mallards in 1947, I think it was, and there's only half a dozen of them still flying. But that particular airplane was I actually flew for several hundred hours in a company that I worked for a long time ago called Airwood Sunday. They had two Grumman Mallards, both of which have been subsequently sold to Pass Paley Pearls, which is the biggest pearling company in the world now. And it's set in the north. Pass Paley is based in Darwin, in the northwest of the Northern Territory. And the story is mostly based on fact, because Pass Paley uses their aircraft, these flying boats, to service their cultured pearl farms in the northwest, to service the motherships, and then they also use the aircraft to take the pearl harvest from the pearl farms back to Darwin. And when they carry the pearl harvest, there's several $1 million worth of pearls on board the aircraft, and they're unprotected. There's only two pilots and one or maybe two security guards on the airplane until, from the time it takes off from the water next to the mothership to the time it lands at Darwin and is met by an armored truck. And so the premise of the story is that one of the Grumman Mallards belongs to Pass Paley Pearls, and then all this is basically fact, not fiction, except for the theft, except for the disappearance of the aircraft. But in the premise of the story is that the mallard goes missing with the pearl harvest on board, does not arrive at Darwin Airport, where it's supposed to be met by an armored truck and and the harvest taken to the bank. And the mystery is surrounded, and of course, Pass Paley Pearls is a genuine company, and all the detail in the story that relates to Pass Paley Pearls is true. It's geographically and historically accurate, as are all the novels. I spent a great deal of research on trying to make all the novels historically and geographically accurate.
Well, I won't ask you whether they find it or not, because that's part of the whole point of reading a book for yourself. But I know that it supposedly took place in the Australian Outback. How does that come into?
Yeah, on the northwest of Western Australia and the Northern Territory is it's virtually unpopulated. It's one of the last frontiers on the planet, except maybe for the interior of South America or Africa. But it's beautiful country. It's completely uninhabited. It's very rugged, very sparsely populated, and that's where most of these cultured pearl farms are located, off the northwest coast of Australia, and actually in the Timor Sea. And that's where the location of the story takes place. And, it's the first story that is set entirely in Australia. The first three novels, the Escalante Enigma, the first one starts in Sydney Harbour, ends up in the Escalante Canyon in Utah, and then the second novel is based in the U.S., and the third novel is partly based in the U.S. and partly en route back to Australia. And the Missing Mallard Mystery is based entirely in the northwest of Australia, because I wanted to have an entirely Australian setting for this one.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what a seaplane is doing out in the desert. That seems odd to me.
These are all amphibian. Both of these airplanes that we are discussing, the PBY and the Grumman Mallard, are both amphibians. They're flying boats, but they also have wheels.
Okay.
So they can literally land and take off from the water, and land or take off from a runway, the land.
Well, see, I just learned something new. Never heard that before.
So the first one ends up in the Arizona or Utah desert, on the water in the Escalante Canyon on the Escalante River, and there's a very descriptive geographical fact about that too.
All right. Well, how about we talk a little bit about your writing process? I want to allow some time after we chat for people here to, oh, there went Dan, he must be coughing, for people to ask you questions themselves. But first, I've got a couple of things that I've thought about. Usually we're interested in, the plotting and the characters, and people may ask you about things like that. I'm kind of curious for a little bit more about the two main characters and their relationship, because I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the main character, Mitch Blaine, I basically that's me. He's really my alter ego. A lot of the things that I've experienced in life that you see in all four novels, or that you read in all four novels, are things that have happened to me that I've expounded on, and and that's why I write in the first person, because I think a person, the reader can if a reader can associate me with the character, I think it makes it more interesting and more readable. So rather than writing he, I write about I, and then I have a lot of my readers say, "Well, I can picture you and your voice and your accent in the story," and that was the object of the exercise. But so the main character is based on some of my own real life adventures, and his sidekick Buyer is also based on kind of a composite of several characters, but one in particular that I knew for real in the airline world. Who, like I mentioned before, you sit there for a long time talking to somebody, and the sidekick's character, was a very close friend of mine, who was a co-pilot of mine, who was British, and knew a typical British upper class snobbish know-it-all who knew everything about the known universe, and I kind of put that real life character into the books, and made him a genuine know-it-all about everything. So a lot of the novels are filled with pages of, when you're spending a lot of time together in the air, hours, and it's particularly in an airplane like the PBY that only cruises at 120 knots, which is very slow compared to the jets that I've flown.
What is that
So
in
I feel
relationship to mileage, if you're in a car? 100,
about 100 miles an hour, which is very, very slow. Yeah. They were designed that way for World War II reconnaissance, compared to the modern jets the modern passenger jets that fly at about 600 miles an hour. So our sidekick Buyer spends a lot of time expounding on the known universe, and much to the boredom and chagrin of Captain Blaine.
right. Well, I have one other burning question. It's always of interest to me because a lot of authors will say that they very much outline their stories. They're very tight about it. They know exactly what they're going to do. And other people will say, well, they hear a lot about things from their characters. It's as though the character is telling them what the story should be. Do you have that? Do you lean either direction there on that idea?
Yeah, on the latter there, I really do. I really don't plan anything out ahead. I just most of my thinking comes when I'm by myself or in bed, or wake up in the middle of the night and think, as if the character is talking to me
Mhm.
and saying, "This is where I need to be, and this is where I need to go." And it's just all the spur of the moment characterization until I get to the actual plot, and then I have to dig into the research pretty well to talk about the country that we're flying over, or that we're in, or the history surrounding them. As in this book, the history of Paspaley pearls up in the northwest of Australia, which is all true. But that's all talked about by our co-pilot sidekick character. But yeah, I really don't have a plan. I don't really sit down at any particular time of the day and have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start writing. I just, when the thought occurs to me, I sit down and put it into words.
There you go.
It's it's all very fractured,
Well,
but in the end,
before I open up for questions from everybody, I did want to share. You last year received something that's pretty remarkable, and I want to open this up for a second and share the screen, and maybe you can tell us about this.
okay, that is the Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award, um, and it's an award that's presented by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, to a pilot who has had 50 years or more of safe, exemplary aviation experience. Doesn't necessarily have to be airline, but it's a combination of all his flying, as long as but it's basically an exemplary pilot with a safety, with an unblemished safety record. Um, and you have to have had 50 years of commercial flying to receive it unblemished. No write-ups, no citations, no loss of license for any reason, no accidents, no incidents. And fortunately, as I mentioned before, the clock on this award started ticking after the plane crash that I had, which was before I acquired my commercial pilot license. So I've had since I recovered from the accident, the training accident. I've had 50 years now of unblemished safe flying, and there's only the FAA inspector who presented it to me said that this is only one of about 9,600 awards for the entire duration of almost 100 years of commercial flying in the States, since the Wright brothers. So in that 100 years or so, there's been hundreds of thousands of commercial pilots come and go, live and die, and only 9,600 and something have been presented with this award. So it's a pretty big award. It's a pretty big honor.
That's great. That's great. Well, congratulations. I'm sure that holds a spot of honor on your wall at home.
It sure does. In our new house, my wife and I have just built and moved into a new barndominium in the Kona Hills, just north of Fort Worth in Texas.
Well, I'm glad I was right when I said you were zooming in from Texas, because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you were out hiding somewhere because you still had those pearls that you found in the book.
No, I'm here, and I don't know whether you can tell from the background, but actually, I'm actually in my RV. I've got a little motorhome, and I'm even in my old. I don't fly anymore commercially because the cutoff limit by the FAA is 65, and I'm 77 now, and I'm still
Whoa.
riding it, and I'm still working, and I'm a simulator instructor for, like I said, for a company that has a U.S. Navy contract, and so. I live. Our house is about 100 miles from here, and rather than doing a 200-mile round trip every day, I bring my little motorhome down to work, park in the parking lot where I am right now, and then hop across the parking lot into the simulator building where I still teach guys to fly the 737. And when I'm not there, I'm here writing my 5th novel.
Oh, good, good. When does that due to come out? Ha ha.
Well, everybody keeps asking me, and the reason I'm writing it so quickly, I'm trying to get it done. Excuse me, it just started raining outside. I'm trying to get this one finished within a year. It took me, like I said, almost 5 years to finish the Missing Mallard Mystery, but people keep asking me to get this one done in a hurry. And many of my readers have asked how Mitch Blaine and his sidekick co-pilot Bayer got together and how it all began. So this one, number 5, is actually a prequel.
Oh, gotcha.
To
idea.
To how Blaine ended up refurbishing a World War II flying boat and living on it in contemporary modern day in Sydney Harbour, and how he ended up doing these covert missions for the Australian government and the US government, and flying around the world in an ancient 80-year-old airplane.
You've flown all over the place, haven't you? What is there a particular country or location that you really like the best?
I was the chief. Yeah, one of my very good jobs that I had several years ago was the chief. I was hired as the chief pilot of a little startup seaplane company in Greece, on the east coast of Greece, in a little place called Volos, about halfway between Athens to the south and Thessaloniki. They pronounce it Thessaloniki, Thessalonica to the north. And Greece was fabulous. So my wife and I were living over there. We were learning to speak Greek, and we were loving the lifestyle. Unfortunately, the year that I was there, I mentioned before that it seems like I've worked for every company that ever went broke. But unfortunately, the year that I was in Greece, and the year that we were planning on staying and living in Greece forever, Greece went broke. That time I broke the entire country, not just not just the country of Greece went broke. So it was after that we came back, and I had another job flying seaplanes up in Alaska after that. But the Missing Mallard Mystery, this latest novel, is set in the far northwest of Western Australia, and that is, like I said, I guess I'm biased, but that is the most beautiful, uninhabited, isolated country that I've ever experienced of all my travels.
Wow.
It's just almost uninhabited. It's pristine, and it's if any of your readers want to Google the Kimberley, what's called the Kimberley area of Northwest Australia, Kimberley, that's the setting of this book, and that's probably my favorite part of the world.
Well, I'm going to ask everybody to go ahead and unmute if they want, if they have something they want to ask, and we'll just throw it open. I know we have a couple of folks here to write some historical stuff, and Steve has a series that he does that's got a lot of information in it that people can learn about in the past. I'll let him, maybe he'll mention that to you, but and we've got a writer who Dan just put out his first. Is it your first? You're muted, Dan, but is this your first thriller? Because he's a
Yes,
romance before.
my first thriller.
Yeah, cool. And Elena's a writer. Honda's just got her first book out. I mean, we've got readers and writers here. So anyway, anybody have a question for Rod?
I have a comment.
Mhm.
No real
Yes,
question. But Rod, you mentioned earlier that you write it in first person. And I just wanted to let you know I appreciate that. I took a seminar last weekend with the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, and one of the classes they had for the seminar talked about using the flaneur in narrative descriptions. And it was so far above my head. I find when I read a book, I'd much rather have first person so that the guy in the story and I could become friends and we could just talk.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so
Yeah,
much more relaxed.
that's why I do it. I've had so many readers say that they can picture me as my character, my alter ego, and they can picture my voice, and that really is great to me, because even though some of these things in my books I've never actually done, a lot of it is fiction, but a lot of it is stuff that I would have loved to have done if I had been really my hero, shooting the bad
Yes.
guys, riding off into the sunset, saving the fair damsels in distress. So I like the fact that readers say, "I can picture you doing these things," and a lot of them I have done, because I can directly relate to the character in the book. What was that word you used a minute ago? For news, Dan?
Flaneur.
Well, yeah, what?
Flaneur. I
That's
think
above
it's
my head.
FLE. I don't know how to spell it, but
That's above my
it's supposedly a way of an omniscient narrator getting fancy with descriptions without stepping outside a character's persona.
Okay.
Way above my head.
Yeah, that's above my pay grade too. The one of my favorite writers was my favorite writers are really Tony Hillerman, who wrote a lot of novels set in the Southwest, about on the Navajo reservation where I finished writing the Escalante Enigma, and Jack Higgins. I like his work. And have you ever heard of John D. MacDonald? Maybe you're old enough. He wrote. He's All of these writers are long dead now, but John D. MacDonald wrote a series of action adventure novels called based on a character by the name of Travis McGee, and I loved them because
Yes.
he wrote in the first person, and I could feel every time he took a blow or was in a fight or was shot or whatever. He was writing in the first person, and I could feel the impact of the punch or the bullet or whatever, because he was saying
Yes.
rather than he. So that's why I decided to write in the first person.
Cool.
But thanks for your comment.
You
And
betcha.
tell me about your thriller. Is this your,
It's I guess you'd call it, if you want to get technical, I guess they call it a hero's journey. I guess it's an everyday man. He's a trucker. He drives the United States and he gets this mystery text while he's en route. And it's just a picture of his wife and his children sound asleep. And the note under the picture says, "You have a beautiful family. Call me." And then a number. Well, that's kind of freaky. So he calls a number. The guy says, "I don't want to hurt your family, but I need you to carry drugs from the East Coast to me in the West Coast. One shot, we're done."
hmm,
Well, it turns out he wants him to do a second shot and a third shot.
mhm.
And eventually he has to take his family into hiding because he starts rebelling and the bad guy burns down his house with the
Oh, yeah.
family in it.
Yeah.
So, so our hero and his trucker buddies declare war on the entire drug scene
Mhm.
in Spokane, which is where it's set. and they have battles raging from Spokane all the way up into the border to the border of Canada.
Kind of like a northern version of Denzel Washington's Man on Fire. So,
Yeah.
did you? Is it published?
Yes, it was just released on Amazon. I independently published it. Just released 3 days ago on the 1st.
Okay, great. Congratulations. Yeah, all mine are independently published too. I spent forever trying to find a publisher for my autobiography, which I self-published, and then I just couldn't find a regular publisher to take a chance on the Escalante Enigma. So I ended up going with a company and a publisher in Colorado called Outskirts Press. They were sending me texts and emails wanting to publish my book, and I went through several of them before I decided on them, and I've been really happy with them. They published the Escalante Enigma, and then I mean their marketing is wonderful. It's outstanding, and then they've done all three other the next two, the Carrizo Conundrum, the Port Havana Paradox, and now the Missing Mallard Mystery. I just like working with them. They've got a great marketing and publishing team, and
Nice.
they're not that expensive to work with. Their marketing is very reasonable.
Well, I visited their site, and it's good. It's well done, and a lot of interesting authors there.
Right.
May I say one more thing, and then I'll quit hogging your time? One last thing. John D. McDonald's The Girl, the Gold Watch, and Everything.
Right.
Remember that one?
Yep.
That was the main book that actually convinced me I should be a writer.
Wow.
Because I love that story so much. I just had to write one myself.
Was that part of the Travis McGee series? I can't remember, but I know that there was a color in every one of the 21 novels that he wrote on Travis McGee, but I think that was a standalone novel, if I remember correctly.
I think it was standalone.
Yeah. But
I don't remember any of the names of the characters. I only remember the situations.
Yeah, he wrote some wonderful books.
Yeah,
but he was one of my heroes. The other hero that I base on my stories on is Dirk Pitt from Clive Cussler.
Yes.
Dirk actually, and Dirk Pitt and his sidekick actually had a PBY in some of their stories, just like my airplanes.
Nice. Well, thanks for letting me take your time.
Yeah, thank you. Nice talking to you.
Anybody else have a burning question just must be answered? Or a comment? We're all a little quiet today, Rod. Things have been serious in our lives, and
they have. Yeah, we've got a lot going on right now.
Yeah, we do.
But if any of them want a good book to read, like Dan was just talking about, all mine are available on Amazon. And it's you mentioned in one of the questions we talked about before, editorial reviews. You wanted to know the difference between an editorial review. I love the reviews that I get from readers, but a lot of them are biased in my favor because they know me, because they're either friends of mine or they bought a previous book. But so I thought I wanted to do an editorial review, which is an unbiased review by an independent editorial reviewer, that will give you the guts of whether they like it or not. Mm-hmm. And that company, the editor, that book review company I used was very fortunately for me, their review was 5-star, like all the others I received. But they do a professional job rather than just writing a review because you got a buddy who buys it on Amazon and says, "Hey, give me a good review."
Yeah, I went to that site, and it's exceptional. And I'll be letting everybody know in one of our newsletters where that is. It's wonderful job. They actually explain the difference between what I do, which is a reader's review, actually more for publishers, but also the readers, and what they were talking about, an editorial review. And some interesting distinctions, and I want to share that information with the Writers Guild and also with book people who love to read and are always out there looking for reviews and stuff. And you actually, this discussion between you and Dan brought up something. I'm thinking one of the things that I'd like to share with all of the book club members, and they'll have access to this link too for the recording on YouTube. So was maybe have add a little section where different authors say what books they would recommend. I think that would be an interesting thing to do, and I'll have to hit you up for that list again, Rod.
Yeah, that it's kind of like Goodreads, where you want the want to read list on Goodreads, and there's several of those editorial companies out there. Another one, I got another 5-star review on Reader's Favorite. I'm sure you're familiar with them. They Reader's favorite. They gave me a 5-star review, and when they give you a 5-star review on one of the books, they also give you either online or in hard form a 5-star coupon or a 5-star sticker that you can put onto your book saying that this was reviewed and got a 5-star review by Reader's Favorite.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
another review. Yeah.
Cool.
So the Missing Mallard Mystery and their first one, the Escalante Enigma, are both 5-star reviews on under review Reader's Favorite.
And I know that they are all available on the Big A, but I did purchase the Missing Mallard Mystery through the bookstore that I work with. And
yeah, you can get them on. They're all. That's another thing I like about this publisher.
Yeah.
They it's just like a regular publisher. You can buy them on Amazon and on their website. You can buy directly from the publisher. You can buy them from bookstore, Barnes and Noble. All of them. They're listed on Ingram's.
yeah, that's
So
why we could order it in, because we get a lot of our what we call our backlist from
Yeah.
Ingram. And so as long as it's on there, we're able to bring it into the store. So that's how I
yeah,
got
that's what I like. That's what I like about it. You can order. Anybody can go into a bookstore, or a brick and mortar bookstore, and say, I want a copy of the Missing Mallard Mystery, and they'll go in their computer, and even if they don't have it on the shelf, they'll say, I can get one for you tomorrow, and they just call the publisher. And it's the amazing side of technology we've got these days, where they can call the publisher and print one book. Where they, like when I wrote the autobiography, the Steel Spine Iron Willie autobiography 30 years ago, they didn't have that digital publishing. I had to buy 2,000 copies to get a decent price break. And up until we had digital publishing, you had to stock them in the stores. But now on Amazon, you just order one from Amazon or a bookstore, and they can get one in tomorrow from just a one copy. The publisher prints one, sends it to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever, and there it is. So it's amazing technology.
Ours don't come in that fast. I'm sorry, because we don't ever order from Amazon. Obviously, we're an indie bookstore, and but we do get ours from Ingram, and they ship it to us. So, and it's pretty quick.
Yeah. One thing that I should have done with all the books that I didn't do, I get a couple of booksellers who tell me that they can't accept it for their shelves because they don't have the return policy. And I should have done that with with all of them, really. But this publisher wanted $400 and something to establish the return policy with Ingram's, and I didn't want to spend that. And in hindsight, I should have, because a lot of the booksellers want the return policy available.
Yeah, that and they can actually, but you can usually do them on consignment. But that you may have to be in the community, living in the community where the store is to do that. I don't, they will reach out a little bit farther, but I know at Auntie's we have something like 100-mile radius of residencies that we will take in.
Yeah. I in this area, I do go to independent bookstores, and in the Dallas Fort Worth area, many of them will accept my books on consignment, like you said, and also many of them have their own little book clubs. So I'm getting a lot of business that way. I'm selling a lot of books just by taking them around the old-fashioned way to bookstores and putting them in consignment. But I keep saying to my Navy colleagues that I'm instructing on the 737, when are you going to quit and retire? And I said, if I can sell enough copies of the Missing Mallard Mystery this year, I'm going to load up my RV that I'm sitting in right now and go on a permanent boondocking book selling tour in person. That's my ultimate game.
Attach some wings to the outside and pretend you're flying.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I can. That's all I can do now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can still fly little airplanes. I'm still licensed to fly, but I just can't fly big jets anymore. So I
But
do the next best thing by teaching.
you're 2 years younger than me, believe it or not, and so just keep going, no problem.
Oh, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't. I mean, I got into this writing thing. I love it. I'm already working on number 5, and I don't know what else I'd do if I wasn't teaching guys to fly in the simulators and writing books. I'd probably be in a nursing home somewhere. And my wife keeps that. My wife is 17 years younger than me. She's only just turned 60 or 61 next month. And she says, you're starting to lose and you're getting dementia. I said, well, okay. If you really think that, take me out to the Grand Canyon and push me off the edge, because I am not, or just lose me somewhere. I'm going to disappear. I'm not going into an assisted living anyway.
There you go. Well,
but I think this keeps us active.
We're a little bit early on things, but if folks don't have any more questions or comments, and if Rod's happy with where we've gone so far, if you've got anything else to say, that's great. And we can go ahead and end early. That's not a problem. And again, this will be up on YouTube within a couple of days, and I will send out the link in the next bulletin that I send out, and also more information about Rod's book, where to get it, and all that. So,
okay.
We sure appreciate.
I'm sure we can do it again when the new one comes out.
There you go. That'd be wonderful. Super. Yeah. Well, I thank you for, we've been working on this for well over a month now, Rod and I, and he's been just great to work with. So you can take a lesson from this man. He knows what he's doing, and he knows how to sell his book.
Thanks, Linda. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all.
Great having you with us. I'm going to turn off the recording.
All right, well, we'll stay in touch.